The pregnant widow they mocked built the revenge that took down a criminal dynasty. Natalie Brooks stood in the marble foyer of the penthouse she'd helped build, staring at her phone screen with trembling hands. The message was simple, brutal, and impossible to unsee. Your husband isn't working late. He's with me. Room 447, Grandview Hotel. Come see for yourself, a friend. Her breath caught in her throat. For 3 years, she'd been the perfect wife to Marcus Brooks, the charming real estate mogul who'd swept her off her feet during her final year of law school. She'd abandoned her dreams of becoming a prosecutor, poured her inheritance into his failing business, and stood by him through bankruptcy threats and sleepless nights. And now, this. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering against the Italian tile. Her reflection stared back from the floor to ceiling windows. A woman who'd made herself smaller, quieter, more convenient. A woman who'd believed in love enough to sacrifice everything. Not anymore. Welcome to Heartfire Obsession. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heart-pounding stories of love, betrayal, and revenge. The drive into hell. 20 minutes later, Natalie pulled into the Grandview Hotel parking lot, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. She hadn't changed out of her yoga pants and oversized sweater. She hadn't bothered with makeup or shoes that matched. None of that mattered now. The hotel lobby smelled of expensive cologne and lies. Her legs moved on autopilot toward the elevator, past couples laughing over cocktails, past businessmen checking their watches, past a world that seemed utterly unaware that hers was ending. 4th floor. Room 447. She stood outside the door for what felt like an eternity, listening. At first, nothing. Then, laughter. A woman's voice, high and bright, followed by Marcus's low rumble. The same laugh he'd once reserved for her during late-night conversations in bed, when the world felt small and safe and theirs alone. Natalie didn't knock. She used the spare keycard Marcus had given her months ago for emergencies. The door clicked open. The scene that destroyed her. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of bedside lamps. Rose petals scattered across white sheets. Champagne glasses on the nightstand. And there, tangled in Egyptian cotton, was Marcus with her sister. Vanessa, her younger sister. The one she'd raised after their parents died in a car crash. The one she'd put through college, supported through breakups, celebrated with at every milestone. Vanessa, who'd lived in their guest room for the past 6 months while getting back on her feet. Time fractured. Natalie heard herself gasp, a strangled sound that didn't seem human. Marcus jerked upright, his face cycling through shock, guilt, and something that looked almost like relief. Vanessa just stared, her lipstick smudged, her eyes wide, but not apologetic. Nat, Marcus started, scrambling for his pants. Don't. Natalie's voice came out flat, dead. Don't say my name. Vanessa pulled the sheet around herself, and that's when Natalie noticed it, the glint of gold on her sister's left hand. An engagement ring, larger than the one Marcus had given Natalie. More expensive, more real. How long? Natalie whispered. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, the gesture she'd once found endearing now making her want to scream. Nat, let me explain. How? Long. 8 months, Vanessa said quietly, and there was something almost defiant in her tone. We tried to stop. We really did. But sometimes you can't help who you fall in love with. The words landed like physical blows. 8 months. That meant it started before Marcus's business miraculously recovered. Before he'd convinced Natalie to put their home in his name alone for tax purposes. Before he'd asked her to sign papers she'd been too trusting to read carefully. You used me, Natalie breathed, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. My money, my connections, my trust. You used all of it to build yourself back up. And then... It's not like that. Marcus said. But his eyes told a different story. A guilty story. A calculated story. Vanessa shifted, and Natalie saw something else, a small suitcase by the bathroom door, already packed. They'd been planning this moment, this reveal. They'd decided when and how to destroy her. "We're in love, Natalie," Vanessa said, her voice steadier now. "Real love. Not the kind where one person gives up everything and the other just takes." The cruelty of it stole Natalie's breath. She'd given Vanessa a home, a second chance, a family. And this was her repayment. The moment everything changed. Natalie turned toward the door, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. "Not here. Not in front of them. Where are you going?" Marcus called after her, and the audacity of the question almost made her laugh. She paused in the doorway, her hand gripping the frame so tightly her knuckles went white. When she spoke, her voice was ice. "To become the woman who destroys you both." She walked out, leaving the door open behind her. Let the whole floor see. Let the world know. In the elevator, alone at last, Natalie allowed herself one shuddering breath. Then she pulled out her phone and opened a new contact. Dmitry Volkov, private investigator. She'd met him at a charity gala last year, a sharp-eyed Russian with a reputation for digging up secrets rich people wanted buried. At the time, she'd thought his business card, pressed into her palm with a knowing smile, was just networking. Now she understood. He'd seen something she hadn't. Something rotten beneath the surface of her perfect life. Her fingers flew across the screen. "I need everything on Marcus Brooks. Financial records, business dealings, affairs, everything. Money is no object. I'm ready to burn it all down." The response came within seconds. "About time, Mrs. Brooks. Let's talk." The shift. As Natalie drove home through the glittering city lights, something fundamental shifted inside her. The woman who'd walked into that hotel room, trusting, loving, broken, was gone. In her place was someone harder. Someone dangerous. She thought of the prenup Marcus had convinced her not to sign, the joint accounts in his name, the property deeds she'd transferred, the inheritance she'd poured into his business. He'd taken everything. Now she would take it back. With interest. But as she pulled into the driveway of the home that no longer felt like hers, Natalie saw something that made her blood run cold. Sitting on the front steps was a manila envelope with her name written in elegant script. Inside, she found 3 things: photographs of Marcus with multiple women over the past 2 years, a flash drive labeled financial fraud, Brooks Industries, and a handwritten note. They thought they were so clever. But they made one mistake. They underestimated you. Use this wisely. You're not the first woman Marcus has destroyed, but you can be the last. Someone who's been watching. Natalie's hands shook as she stared at the evidence scattered across her lap. Someone out there knew everything. Someone had been documenting Marcus's crimes, his lies, his betrayals. And they'd chosen this moment, this specific devastating moment, to give her the ammunition she needed. But why? And who? As sirens wailed somewhere in the distance and the first drops of rain began to fall, Natalie made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't just going to expose Marcus and Vanessa. She was going to destroy them so completely they'd wish they'd never heard her name. The war had begun, and Natalie Brooks was done playing defense. The woman in the mirror. Natalie didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen island until dawn, the manila envelope's contents spread before her like a war map. The photographs showed Marcus with at least 5 different women over 2 years. Business lunches that became hotel visits, client meetings that lasted until 3 a.m., romantic getaways he'd claimed were solo work trips. But it was the flash drive that held the real power. As the sun rose over the city, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and gold, Natalie plugged the drive into her laptop. What she found made her stomach turn: shell companies, embezzled funds, falsified contracts. Marcus hadn't just used her money to save his business, he'd used her name to commit fraud. Her inheritance, her trust fund, her reputation, all weaponized without her knowledge. The documents showed a pattern of behavior dating back 7 years, long before he'd met her. Marcus Brooks was a professional con artist who specialized in marrying wealthy women, draining their resources, and moving on. She was number 4. The previous 3 wives had all signed NDAs and taken settlements to stay quiet. One had died under mysterious circumstances that the file noted as suspicious but unproven. Natalie's hands trembled as she read. She wasn't just a victim. She was a mark, a target, a means to an end. The rage that rose in her chest was something primal, ancient, and absolutely focused. The meeting that changed everything. At 9 a.m. sharp, Natalie walked into Dmitry Volkov's office in a designer suit she'd forgotten she owned. Her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her makeup flawless. If she was going to war, she'd dress for it. Dmitry looked exactly as she remembered. Mid-40s, silver at his temples, eyes like a wolf's. His office was sparse, professional, and lined with file cabinets that probably held 1,000 secrets. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, gesturing to a leather chair, "I've been expecting you. Though I hoped it wouldn't come to this, you knew. It wasn't a question." "I've known about Marcus Brooks for 3 years," Dmitry said, sitting across from her. "I was hired by his second wife to document his activities after their divorce. When I saw him targeting you, I kept watching, waiting for the right moment. And the envelope? The evidence? Insurance. The women he destroyed before you, they wanted someone to stop him, but they were too afraid, too broken, too isolated. You're different, Mrs. Brooks. You have something they didn't." "What's that?" Dmitry smiled, and it was sharp as a blade. Nothing left to lose. The plan takes shape. Over the next 2 hours, Dmitry laid out a strategy so comprehensive it took Natalie's breath away. He'd been building a case against Marcus for years, waiting for someone with the courage and resources to see it through. "First," Dmitry said, sliding a folder across his desk, "we freeze his assets. These documents show he's been hiding money in offshore accounts, money that legally belongs to you under community property law. We file an emergency injunction before he knows you're coming." Natalie nodded, her mind racing. "Second, we go to the SEC. The fraud isn't just civil, it's criminal. Wire fraud, securities fraud, tax evasion. With this evidence, we can get federal prosecutors involved. Marcus could face 20 years. And Vanessa?" Natalie's voice cracked slightly on her sister's name. Dmitry's expression softened. "Your sister is listed as a co-conspirator in several documents. She's been helping him move money, forge signatures, create false paperwork. She's not just his mistress, she's his accomplice." The betrayal cut deeper than Natalie thought possible. Vanessa hadn't just stolen her husband. She'd been helping him rob her blind. "There's something else," Dmitry said carefully. "The engagement ring he gave your sister? It was purchased with funds embezzled from your trust. Technically, it's stolen property." Natalie laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the quiet office. "Perfect." The first strike. By noon, Natalie had signed papers that would change everything. By 2 p.m., federal marshals were executing warrants at Brooks Industries. By 4 p.m., every news outlet in the city was running breaking stories about Marcus Brooks, Golden Boy developer, accused of fraud, embezzlement, and a pattern of financial abuse spanning a decade. Natalie watched it unfold from Dmitry's office, her phone buzzing incessantly with calls from Marcus, from Vanessa, from friends and relatives who couldn't believe what they were seeing. She answered none of them. Instead, she made one call to Catherine Lynn, the most vicious divorce attorney in the state. "I want everything," Natalie said when Catherine answered. "The houses, the business, the cars, the reputation. I want him to have nothing left but the truth of what he is." "Consider it done," Catherine replied, her voice thrumming with anticipation. "I've been waiting for someone to take down Marcus Brooks for years. Let's destroy him." The confrontation. At 7 p.m., Natalie returned to the penthouse for the last time. She'd had the locks changed, the security codes updated, and a restraining order filed. Marcus couldn't come within 500 feet of her. But she'd left him one thing: a gift box on the Marble Island, where she'd first read the message that shattered her world. Inside the box, the engagement ring he'd given her 3 years ago, now accompanied by copies of all the evidence against him, and a handwritten note. "You taught me that love is a weapon. Now watch what I do with that lesson. Everything you built was mine. Everything you stole, I'm taking back." "And Marcus? I'm going to make sure every woman you ever lied to sees exactly who you are. Enjoy prison. The wife you underestimated." She'd just finished packing her last suitcase when her phone rang. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, Natalie answered. "Hello, Natalie." The voice was female, smooth, educated, and utterly unfamiliar. "We haven't met, but I'm the one who sent you the envelope." Natalie's heart raced. "Who are you?" "Someone who's been watching Marcus Brooks for a very long time. Someone who has a vested interest in seeing him destroyed. And someone who needs your help to finish what we've started." "What do you mean?" "Marcus isn't working alone. There's someone above him. Someone who's been orchestrating a network of con artists targeting wealthy women across the country. Marcus is just one player, but he's the key to taking down the entire operation." Natalie sank onto the couch, her mind reeling. "Why me?" "Because you're smart, resourceful, and angry enough to see this through. And because..." The woman paused. "Because the person running this operation is someone you know, someone close to you." "Who?" The line went silent for a long moment. Then, "Your father-in-law. Richard Brooks. He's been running this con for 30 years. Marcus learned everything from him." The phone slipped from Natalie's fingers. "Richard Brooks, the philanthropist, the community leader, the man who'd walked her down the aisle when her own father couldn't, the man who'd comforted her after her parents died, who'd welcomed her into the family with open arms." "No," Natalie whispered. "That's not possible. It's not just possible. It's true. And there's more. Richard has targets lined up. 6 women currently being groomed by his network of sons. We can stop them, Natalie. But only if you help me." "Why should I trust you?" "Because," the woman said, her voice hardening, "I'm wife number 3. The one they said died under mysterious circumstances. And I've spent the last 7 years planning my revenge from the grave." The call ended. Natalie sat in the empty penthouse, surrounded by packed boxes and the wreckage of her old life, and realized with terrifying clarity that this was only the beginning. Marcus wasn't the monster. He was just the monster's son. And somewhere out there, a dead woman was very much alive, and ready to burn the whole empire to the ground. The question was, would Natalie join her? The woman who came back from the dead. Natalie met the ghost 3 days later in a warehouse district on the edge of the city. The kind of place where questions weren't asked and cameras didn't reach. The woman who walked out of the shadows was striking, mid-30s, with platinum blonde hair and eyes that had seen too much. "My name is Elena Volkov," she said, extending a hand. Though you probably knew me as Elena Brooks. The last name hit Natalie like a punch. Volkov? As in Dmitri. My brother, Elena confirmed with a slight smile. The only person who believed me when I said Richard Brooks tried to kill me. The only person who helped me disappear. They sat across from each other at a metal table, and Elena laid out a story so horrifying it made Marcus's betrayal seem almost quaint by comparison. Richard Brooks had built an empire on the destruction of wealthy women. He'd trained his sons, biological and recruited, to seduce, marry, and systematically drain their targets. The money flowed up to Richard, who laundered it through legitimate businesses and charitable foundations. He was untouchable, beloved, and utterly evil. Marcus was always the best student, Elena said bitterly. Richard was so proud of him. 3 successful marks before you, each one more profitable than the last. You were supposed to be his masterpiece, the biggest score before he retired and started mentoring the next generation. Natalie felt sick. And Vanessa? Your sister wasn't seduced by Marcus. She was recruited by Richard. Elena slid photographs across the table, Vanessa meeting with Richard months before she'd moved into Natalie's guest room. Documents showing payments made to Vanessa's accounts. Text messages outlining the plan to get closer to the target. It was all staged, Elena continued. The breakup that brought her back to you. The financial troubles that made her seem vulnerable. Even the sisterly bonding moments. Vanessa was paid to betray you from the beginning. Tears burned behind Natalie's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. Why? She whispered. Why would she do that? Debt. Richard has a gift for finding people desperate enough to do anything. Your sister owed the wrong people money, gambling debts that would have gotten her killed. Richard offered her a way out. All she had to do was help destroy you. The bigger picture. Elena pulled out a tablet and brought up files, dozens of them. Photographs, financial records, surveillance footage. 6 women across the country, all currently being targeted by Richard's network of trained con artists. These women don't know their marks yet, Elena explained. They're in the honeymoon phase, believing they've found true love with charming men who just happen to be Richard Brooks's business associates. Natalie studied the faces. A tech CEO in San Francisco. A surgeon in Boston. A venture capitalist in Chicago. A federal judge in Atlanta. A best-selling author in Seattle. An heiress in Miami. All successful, accomplished women, all being systematically set up for destruction. We can save them, Elena said. But we need to take down Richard first. And for that, we need something more than evidence. We need a confession. How? Elena's smile turned predatory. We give Richard exactly what he wants. A new mark so perfect, so irresistible, he can't help but take the bait himself. Who? You. The ultimate con. The plan was insane, dangerous, and absolutely brilliant. Natalie would stage a public breakdown, divorcing Marcus, taking a massive settlement, and appearing to spiral into reckless spending and bad decisions. She'd make herself look vulnerable, damaged, and desperate for validation. Then Richard would come to comfort her, just as he'd done after her parents died. But this time, Natalie would be wearing a wire. This time, she'd be working with federal prosecutors who'd granted Elena immunity in exchange for her testimony. This time, the trap would close around Richard Brooks instead of his victims. He'll try to recruit you, Elena warned. He'll tell you that Marcus was weak, that he failed you, that you deserve better. Then he'll introduce you to another son, someone even more charming, even more perfect. And in that introduction, he'll reveal everything. He always does. It's his ego. He can't help but brag about his brilliance. Natalie felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. When do we start? Tomorrow, at your parents' grave. Richard always visits on the anniversary of their death. He'll expect you to be there. He'll expect you to be broken. Give him what he expects, and then let him hang himself. The graveyard trap. The cemetery was quiet under overcast skies, the kind of gray day that made everything feel heavy and mournful. Natalie stood before her parents' headstone, genuinely crying for them, for the life she'd lost, for the sister who'd betrayed her. Richard Brooks arrived exactly on time, dressed in an expensive black suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. He looked every inch the grieving friend, the supportive father figure. "Natalie," he said softly, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so sorry about Marcus. I had no idea he was capable of such things." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, Natalie almost believed it herself. "I feel so stupid," she whispered, the wire hidden beneath her black dress capturing every word. "I thought he loved me." "Love is complicated," Richard said, his hand rubbing her back in what was supposed to be comfort but felt like possession. Marcus was weak. He didn't appreciate what he had. But not all men are like him, Natalie. Some of us understand loyalty. Some of us know how to treat a woman of your caliber. There it was, the opening move. Over the next hour, Richard executed his playbook perfectly. He told her about his foundation for helping survivors of financial abuse. He introduced the idea of her meeting his trusted associates who could help her rebuild. He even mentioned a particular young man, brilliant, handsome, recently divorced himself, who would be perfect for someone like her. And then, in the shadow of her parents' grave, Richard Brooks made his fatal mistake. "You know, Natalie," he said, his voice dropping to something almost confessional. "I've spent 30 years helping men learn how to identify and cultivate relationships with exceptional women. Women like you, intelligent, successful, vulnerable in just the right ways. It's almost an art form, really. Marcus was my best student before he got sloppy and emotional. But the next generation will be even better. And with your help, we could." "Could what?" Natalie asked, meeting his eyes for the first time. "Destroy more women? Steal more lives?" Richard's expression shifted, first confusion, then realization, then rage as FBI agents emerged from behind headstones, their weapons drawn. Natalie Brooks was wearing a wire. "Mr. Brooks," the lead agent announced. "And everything you just said has been recorded. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and about 15 other charges we're still compiling." The fall. The next 6 weeks moved with devastating speed. Richard Brooks, Marcus Brooks, and 17 other men in their network were arrested. Vanessa was offered a plea deal in exchange for testimony. The 6 targeted women were warned and protected. The story exploded across national media, not as a tabloid scandal, but as a criminal enterprise that had operated for 3 decades. Natalie became the face of survival, giving interviews that helped other victims come forward. 37 women eventually joined the case. The settlement funds were massive, but Natalie donated most of hers to creating a foundation that helped women escape financial abuse. Elena got her justice and her life back. She and Dmitry opened a private investigation firm specializing in exposing con artists. And Natalie? She stood in the penthouse one last time before closing the sale, looking out at the city that had almost destroyed her. Her phone buzzed with a message from Catherine Lynn. Final divorce decree approved. "You got everything. Marcus got 15 years. Congratulations." Natalie smiled, not with joy, but with the grim satisfaction of someone who'd walked through fire and come out forged in steel. She'd lost a husband and a sister. But she'd found herself. And in the end, that was the ultimate revenge. The game was over. And Natalie Brooks had won.